2025 is a groundbreaking exhibition and accompanying book about design dialogues between California and Mexico. Its four main themes explore how modern and anti-modern design movements defined both locales throughout the 20th century. Half of the show's more than 250 objects represent architecture, conveyed through drawings, photographs, and films to illuminate the unique sense of place that characterized California's and Mexico's buildings. This exhibition is the first to examine how interconnections between California and Mexico shape the material culture of each place, influencing and enhancing how they presented themselves to the wider world. The exhibit runs at LACMA until Sunday, April 1st. And that's a look at some things to do.
Got a condo made of stoner.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition. I'm Yana Kane from all of us here at LA This Week. Thanks for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Chatsworth, offering you a taste of New Orleans since 1986. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel.
If everyone could please take their seats. Good morning.
Por favor, si todos pueden tomar asiento. Por favor, si todos pueden tomar asiento.
We want to welcome you
Queremos darle la
to City
bienvenida a
Hall.
sus
Los
consejos de la
Angeles City
ciudad.
Council. This council meets
Este
every
consejo se reúne
Tuesday,
todos los
Wednesday, and
martes,
Friday.
miércoles y
Madam Clerk,
viernes.
we
Señora
have a quorum.
secretaria,
Could you
tenemos
please call
quórum.
the
Puede
roll?
llamar la lista. Bloomington, Bonnie, Buscaino, Cedillo, Harris, Dawson, Wizard, Correa, Martínez, O'Farrell, Price, Weston. 11 miembros presentes y tenemos quórum, señor presidente.
Okay,
Ok.
first order of business.
Lo primero que tenemos que hacer es la aprobación de las actas. O'Farrell move y Correa es la segunda. Resoluciones comendatorias para aprobación. Rodríguez move y Bonin la segunda. Señor presidente, hoy es martes, tiempo para hacer saludo a la bandera. Por favor, si se pueden poner de pie todas las personas que están en la sala, pónganse de pie. Pónganse de pie para nuestro saludo a la bandera. Voy a pedirle Le voy a pedir a Brian, ¿dónde está? Brian, si podemos, ¿dónde está Brian Walters? Si tú pudiera, ¿dónde está el señor Buscaino? Escritorio. Este es su último día. Y vamos a pedirle a usted y a una jovencita que nos le lleven a llegar el señor Walters y felicitaciones en su último día. Definitivamente lo vamos a extrañar también con el señor Walters. Está Andrés Rodríguez, el orgullo de Wilmington, nos está visitando acá durante el Spring Work. Viene desde la Universidad de Berkeley. Por favor, únase a nosotros. La saludo a la bandera.
We could get everybody put your right hand over your heart and repeat after us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Si pudiera empezar a revisar la agenda, por favor, señora secretaria. Silencio, por favor. Señor presidente, una solicitud de aplazar el 1A y 1K por 30 días hasta abril 25. Se ordena. El Departamento de Construcción y Seguridad también solicita que los siguientes temas sean recibidos y archivados. 1D, F, G y L ya han sido pagados su totalidad los gravámenes. 1C ha sido pagado y el tema ha sido rescindido. 1H es la propiedad ha sido determinada que sea un propietario vive y exenta de proceso de gravámenes sin que haya ninguna objeción. Eso es lo que se ordena. Sigue adelante el tema, audiencias públicas. ¿Puede repetir? Una es un tema para audiencias públicas y hay tarjetas. Sigue adelante. Del 2 al 16, audiencias públicas ya se llevaron a cabo. Se requiere tener el número 11 y 16 en el escritorio. Pongámonos a un lado.
Please, Mr. Koretz.
Could I also ask that we call 7 special?
Okay, we'll hold 7 as well. Let's begin to vote on the remaining items. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Continue. Mr. Blumenfield.
May I ask that item 4 be forthwith that we just voted on?
Without objection. Continue.
Items 17 through 30 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, those items are now before this body. Do you have cards on these items?
Yes, there are cards on all items.
Okay, continue.
Mr. President, that takes council back to presentations or items called special or general public comment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if we can turn our attention to the podium, Councilmember Wesson, the floor is yours.
Can I get the staff? Come on, staff. Just don't be shy.
Can my family come?
Can your family more importantly, please. In fact, we're all your family on this day. Is Holly? Thank you, Mr. President and members. To the people who clean these chambers, to the sergeants that protect these chambers, to Channel 35 who lights up these chambers, to the city attorney's office, to the CLA's office, to the city clerk's office, I just want to say that you guys are the guts of this operation. And members, I believe that this council possibly could be run without us. But without a doubt, it could not be run without them. So do me a favor and give the people, the public servants that the people really never know their names, give them a round of applause. Because what we're celebrating today is we are celebrating our dear friend Brian, who helped Mr. Buscaino with the pledge, and trust me, Mr. Buscaino can always use help. He helped Mr. Buscaino with the pledge, but we're celebrating all of the work that he's done for us for almost 3 decades. And we are also saying thank you to him on this day, which is his, I guess a few days ago was his official last day. I think also today what we want to do for you, Brian, is to celebrate your future and the new chapter that you're going to begin writing in your life, and wish you well. And members, Brian's going to be leaving us, going to Las Vegas, playing bingo, and drinking free drinks, and that's not my line, that's just a fact. He started here almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago, as a tax permit representative, field representative. I don't even know what the hell that is. But he worked his way up all the way to a position where he has wound up being one of the most integral parts, a critical part of the entire operation that occurs on this floor. He has been a class act every day that he's come to work, and he's been a great role model and very, very serious about his work. There are probably thousands and thousands and thousands of trees that are giving a sigh of relief because he led the charge in moving the city clerk's office in this city in a paperless direction. The kiosk in the back, he basically quarterbacked that operation. He is more than a staff person, more than an employee, more than a co-worker to the people that you see behind me. He is family, and he is a dear friend. And we wanted to ensure that we did the very best that we could to recognize 3 decades of service. Now, he could have been in the private sector, and he just has that ability. He could have just done so much. But he came here, and he chose to devote his life as a public servant to the residents of the people of the great city of Los Angeles. Now, many of you may think that when I run the council, that I do it kind of free and easy and kind of get things done. You were not here my first practice session when everybody was like, oh Lord, what have we done? But it was Brian and his team that got me up to speed, and I'm sure that Mr. Englander and Ms. Martinez could attest to the fact that they have always been there for us. And the last thing that I want to say, this, and I don't know if Brian knows this, but in a lot of ways this is a big challenge for me to recognize Brian, because I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And for those of you that know Brian, you know that he is a die-hard Pittsburgh Steeler fan. And I know some of you probably weren't born, but there was a time when one of the greatest rivalries in the National Football League was between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. But there's one thing that we both have where it relates to each other. Cleveland has always respected the Pittsburgh area folk, and the Pittsburgh area folk have always respected Cleveland as well. So what we want to do is I'm going to give you something that you've probably oversaw for, I don't know how many of these you've ever received in your life. He said this is going to be the first. But we want to let you know, man, that we spend more time with each other than with our families sometimes. And so you are definitely a family to this city hall, to this council, and to all of the offices that work within. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in saying good luck to a man that has definitely paid his dues to the great city of Los Angeles, and that's Brian Walters. Give him a round of applause. Let's smile, Brian. Act like Pittsburgh just won the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. And let me just say, first of all, Brian, and to our entire backbone of this chamber, and they very much are the lifeblood that keeps this heart pumping. For every time that we've said, where are we at? And somebody's got to turn around and tell us where we're at. Or what do you mean we can't do that? What do you mean we got to open it up again? That's a great one. What do you mean we got to open it up again? Can somebody explain what you're voting on? To all the things that you guys do to keep this train moving. And we so much appreciate it from all of us. And Mr. Weston, thank you so much for recognizing, as you said, the most important people in the room, that rain or shine, no matter what's going on in their lives, they're always here, and they're always on top of everything, all the time. And it's incredible what they're able to juggle and multitask. But more importantly, or worse yet, is putting up with us. And so for that, we truly appreciate it. So thank you very much for recognizing all of the backbone of this chamber. Thank you very much. Let's give them all another round of applause. And Brian, congratulations.
I'm going to turn it over to Brian for a few words.
20 years in this chambers. I got more than a few words.
Your time is up.
Okay. Yeah, and I do appreciate, Erica, you not starting that clock. You know, this did come as a total surprise, and I really wish I would have prepared something to say. I'd love to thank President Wesson for doing this presentation today. I'm not sure how much they paid him or if they guaranteed him that the Cleveland Browns will win a game next year. But thank you, Mr. President. My dad, who is here today, served 20 years with the LAPD and then another 18 with the CAO. And he asked me once if I would consider a career with the city after knowing I was putting in 60-hour-plus work weeks in the private sector. So I put in my application, passed the test, got an interview. Now keep in mind, the only interview I had ever had before coming to this city was standing in the middle of a retail store with the manager asking me, "Are you willing to work nights and weekends?" The minute I answered yes, I was hired on the spot. So I go to the interview, sterile white room, no windows, 3 complete strangers staring at me on the opposite side of the table. I come out of that room, my heart racing, dripping sweat, to see my dad waiting and ask me how it went. I told him terrible, and how this one interviewer had such a mean look, he didn't smile, had no expressions whatsoever, and didn't seem to like my responses. Wouldn't you know it, turned out to be my first supervisor in the city, and here I am 28 years later. I served as legislative assistant to various committees before getting drafted, and I do mean drafted, to sit in that chair as the council clerk. I remember my first day in that chair up there, I was so nervous, making sure I didn't mumble or spit on camera, only to have council audio come up behind me during the meeting and whisper in my ear that Channel 35 had called to let me know my hair was sticking up in the back of my head. Really? There's the motivation that I was looking for and the confidence booster. But needless to say, I survived that meeting and went on to do that job for almost 9 years. After leading the Council and Public Services Division over the years, I'm very proud of the entire CPS team and what we've accomplished together. And I do want to say that again, together. While there are a number of great individuals, none of the accomplishments would have been possible without collectively as a team. I want to thank Holly and Shannon for believing in me and trusting me to lead this division, for allowing me to be me and make decisions without interfering. And I want to thank all of my staff for their hard work, their patience, understanding, and probably most importantly, their tolerance over the years. I'd also like to thank Sharon So, Karen Kay, and the entire CLA staff for their support over the years. Thank you to the CAO's office, city attorney, and city staff whose path I've crossed over the years. After surviving valley fever in 2011, losing my mom in 2013, and suffering a heart attack in 2015, not to mention 3 wonderful marriages and subsequent divorces, I realized life is too short. It's truly been an honor and privilege serving this great city, this council and mayor, but it's time to write the next chapter of my life. People have been asking me, what are you going to do in retirement? And my response is simply, whatever the hell I want. Thank you for this incredible presentation today.
Great speech. Well done. Well done, Brian. Congratulations. Thank you.
Let's go take some.
Let's go ahead and go into multiple speaker items now. Mr. Previn, items 1, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 27, 28, and 29. And then 1 minute for general public comment. Again, on the council rules, you'll stay on the agenda items and not yell into the microphone or make noises. You won't raise your voice, and you'll keep it down, keep it specific to the agenda item, or you'll forfeit your time. If you continue that, you'll be asked to leave council chambers. Thank you, Mr. Previn, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. It's Eric Previn from CD Tour Studio City, and I appreciate the pre-warning there. Thank you. Item number 1 today in the lien item, we have 2 separate liens that were very close, and whereas last week, as you know, Mr. Harris Dawson inched ahead of Rodriguez. This week, today rather, it is Monica Rodriguez of CD7 who has garnered the biggest lien against a constituent, followed immediately by Mr. Buscaino, who scooched in with just a sort of a $400 less. And of note, it is interesting, Mr. Huizar, who, you know, doesn't like to be bothered with leaning on his constituents, has one of the smallest liens today against a constituent for only $480, which is a very low and small, dinky little lien. But nonetheless, kudos. And congratulations to Mr. Walters, who did a very good job of exhausting the public of its opportunities. And one thought as he heads for the door, the advertisement for the...
Could we get back on the agenda?
Yes, I agree. Thank you. PPD 2...
Please, no, you were off the agenda, so go ahead and start as 1 minute for general public comment.
No, that's not cool, Mr. Englander.
No, it's not cool that I gave you the warning, and you know the rules, and you're here every single day.
No,
and you do this
sir.
on every single committee meeting and every single time
That's
you
a
come
lie,
up, and you're
sir.
not on the
You're out of
specific agenda item. And
You'll be
so
following Mr.
just
Walters.
go ahead and start your
Item
1 minute
number
general public
17
comment. You
is
have 1
Prop
minute.
K. Sir, you can't do that. Prop K is a voter approved initiative from 1996 in which various projects for Parks and Rec were earmarked. And in my neighborhood, you also have a celebration of awards for neighborhood empowerment. They didn't do an adequate job of noticing anybody in the area about the plans to spend over $10 million during a homeless crisis on a mistaken take on our local park, which we know a great deal about because we live there. So where it has been pushed this way and that, it's not cool, and Prop K is getting the $25 million assessment coming very, very soon. You've got some Mills Act adjustments being made, which are in the section of the agenda where you can't speak on it. And you've got a beautification meeting up in the tower with Ms. Martinez and Ms. Rodriguez. And we do appreciate it because our neighborhoods are struggling, and we're trying to find ways to accommodate the people who are, you know, pushed out of places to live. And we're looking for your leadership, sir, not in the Smart Boot program, but actually in the program to
All right,
find
thank
a
you very
place
much. So the next speaker, please, is going to be John Walsh. Again, same rules, John. You know the rules. You're here every day. Items 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I'm sorry, not 29, and 30. And then general public comment.
John Walsh. I wasn't here yesterday. It was dark here yesterday. As far as these items are concerned, building and safety, you do a good job. Bicycles, you do a good job. And gang reduction, you do a terrible job. Gang Reduction Committee relative to withdrawals and restatements of public streets. Whatever the gangs want, they'll get. Planning and use management relative to removing the inclusion of property. That's what they're doing there is fitting in huge skyscrapers to chase out African Americans from their historic neighborhood. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And Mayor dated the fire. The fire could have been about 1/2 as bad as it was, except you didn't know what you were doing. You had people back, you had fire department people 1,000 miles away trying to fight that fire. And it just didn't work. And 475 acres at the 405 freeway. 475 acres burnt. And what are you going to do? Give the fire department a reward. Give them a medal, a linoleum medal. Okay.
Okay, excuse me, Herman, sergeants, can you please escort him out? He walked in here making animal noises. He knows all the rules. You just disrupted this meeting. You're out. No more warnings.
I didn't find
You don't get a warning every single day you're in here. You're out.
I don't find
Sergeants,
those animal
please
noises.
escort him out. Don't yell out. Do not yell out. Do not yell out, Mr. Herman. Herman, you're continuing to yell out. Sergeants escort him out.
Give him my time.
You're done. Thank you. Continuing to disrupt the meeting. Still continuing to yell out and disrupt the meeting. All right, thank you very much. Goodbye. If he disrupts the meeting from the hallway, escort him out of there too. Still disrupting the meeting from the hallway.
Okay, I'm going to give you back your 1 minute so I can go into public comment. We got a new owner of the LA Times. It used to be owned by a corporation, and it was owned, by a family and then a corporation. Nobody knows where they are now, as far as Patrick is concerned, and everybody's wearing knee pads. I'm telling you right now that we are going to fight, and I know a little more about how to disrupt the meeting. It's that's the
All right, Mr. Walsh, stick to the items.
Not
the sound.
City Attorney, did I do something disruptive? Tell me what.
You're off topic. Please get back on the agenda.
I'm on public comment related. See, all you're doing up there, Mr. City Attorney, is jerking off. You don't even know where we are in the agenda.
Mr. Walsh, that's not general public comment, so thank you very much. All right. The next general multi-card speaker. Okay, colleagues, we're going to go actually ahead and vote on items 18 through 30. So on those items, we'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Thank you. Ms. McAllister. You have 1 minute on item 17.
And number one, Mr. Secretary.
1A was continued, so you have one item, number 17, for 1 minute.
Number 17, I object to the LA for Kids Steering Committee that you initiate these under Proposition K. I object because out of every 100 kid, 95 are illegal aliens. And I can prove this by the school population broken down by race. LAUSD has 750,000 students, 550,000 are illegal Hispanic, Asians, and Latinos. The Compton Unified School District has 23,000 students, 19,000 are illegal Hispanic, Latino, Asian. Baldwin Park Unified has 17,000 students, 16,000 are Hispanic, Latino, and Asians. I don't think we should be doing anything with schools at this time because that money is going to illegal aliens, and I'll talk later about the invasion of the United States of these illegals.
Yes, Mr. Krett.
Yes, if I could just take a couple seconds, I'd like to introduce the Mayor Pro Tem of Hawthorne, Haydar Awad, and I've worked with him on some things relating to SpaceX, so I just wanted to acknowledge his presence here in the council chambers. So welcome.
Ms. McAllister, you still had another minute for general public comment. Did you still wish to speak on your general public comment?
What about my number one?
So no, you filled out the cards for number 1 and 17. 1 was continued, so you spoke on 17, but then you still have a minute left for your general public comment.
Okay, my general public comment is more about the student population. That's what I want to talk about. And Nuri Martinez, her 6th district, she is not building anything in 10966 West Ratner. I've been driving around to these developments. I've only seen, out of 5 so far, I've only seen 1 development that's under construction. That's in District 13 O'Farrell at 370 North Madison. That's on Vermont and Madison. He has construction going on there. Now, there's a Virgil Middle School down the street. I taught at that middle school, and I can tell you out of every student, there are about 5 African Americans. So that whole community is illegal aliens. So anything you build now, you're building for illegal aliens. Okay, I know the area. I taught over there. Another thing about the population of these students. This country has been invaded. We're going to have a civil war. You can look in this room right now. We're going to have a civil war. Drive by any school at 3 o'clock and see what kind of students you see coming out. So be prepared, Americans. Be prepared.
Okay, colleagues, we're going to go ahead and vote on item 17. If we can go ahead and open the roll on item 17. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14
And
ayes.
that is approved. Okay, and Councilmember Koretz, you had called item 7 special?
Thank you, Mr. President. Pink's Hot Dogs is a 77-year-old landmark at 709 North La Brea Avenue in Hollywood, perhaps the most famous hot dog stand in the world. At this location, Pink's serves over 2,000 hot dogs and 200 hamburgers a day. It was started in 1939 by Paul and Betty Pink with a $50 push cart purchased from money they borrowed from Betty's mother. The land on which the push cart stood rented for $15 a month. Hot dogs were 10 cents and Cokes were a nickel. Pink's offered curb service and sold 100 hot dogs a day in 1941. The landlord raised their rent from $15 to $25, and so with a loan from Bank of America for $4,000, they purchased the land. They added a cover to the pushcart, which allowed them to also grill hamburgers. In 1947, Paul and Betty Pink built a small hot dog stand building, which today is near the corner of La Brea and Melrose. To date, the family has created over 35 combinations of hot dogs and a dozen variety of hamburgers to satisfy its varied taste of their patrons. Pink's, which is located near major Hollywood studios like Paramount, Universal, and Disney, attracted up-and-coming and established movie and TV stars. Pink's also has a celebrity wall in the dining room, which originally started as a place for up-and-coming actors to post their pictures with the hope of being discovered by producers and directors who eat at Pink's. And they're a progressive hot dog stand. They even have a vegan dog available for folks that want to join their families and don't eat meat. They now have 15 locations, including Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Diego, Ohio, Connecticut, New York, Miami, Hawaii, and the Philippines. Today I ask for your aye vote to name the intersection of La Brea and Melrose as Pink Square, and the Department of Transportation be directed to fabricate and install appropriate ceremonial signs to this effect at this location. I personally relish the opportunity to do this, and this way we can catch up to other locations throughout the city. Sorry, I didn't plan that, but I just couldn't resist. I'd like to recognize the Pink's family. Richard, Gloria, and Beverly, welcome and congratulations. Thank you. And I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Buscaino, did you speak on this issue?
I'd like to, if I may. I would only support this resolution under one condition, Mr. Koretz. If a Pink's hot dog is brought to the new LA waterfront development. Is that it? Oh, thumbs up. Great. You got my support. Thank you.
All right, let's open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you. Let's move to item 11. I would like to hear from John Gonzalez and a H. Keith Renty. Please come forward.
Hi, good morning. I'm here representing the Baldwin Hills Estates HOA, a neighborhood of 1,100 homes in the affected area. I'm here to support the passage of item number 11. This traffic study was originally suggested by DOT Planning and our council office a year ago. The genesis of was a discussion about how traffic patterns have changed in our area since the EIR data was collected by the proposed Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza project almost 10 years ago. The advent of navigational systems and more so the opening of the Metro Expo line run at grade has already caused a significant change in the traffic patterns. The area is now poised to open another Metro line partially at grade, the Crenshaw LAX line, and more importantly, 3 million square feet of build out and 2 million other square feet in 13 other developments. So as a part of the plan to address these effects and provide for a holistic build out plan, our councilmen Harris, Dawson, and Wesson have thankfully proposed this study, and we ask that it be approved.
Thank you. Next speaker, and Mr. Goodman, you'll be the last speaker on this. Yes, Mr. Renty, right?
Yes, my name is Keith Renty. I'm president of the Baldwin Hills Homeowners Association, which represents, as John mentioned, 1,100 homes. We want this motion to go forward. It's imperative that we have this impact study. I'm a 55-year resident, and for years we've had very good ingress and egress from our community. Now it takes 45 minutes to go down La Brea to the freeway, which once took 5, and there's much more development coming. So as I say, once again, it is imperative that we have this study, and frankly, I would like to see it expanded all the way to the Santa Monica Freeway, to be quite honest, but we'll take what we can get, but it's imperative that we have this. Once again, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Goodman.
Good morning, council members. Damian Goodman of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, speaking in strong support of this resolution. We've been engaged, as you all know, in the Crenshaw Subway Coalition in a community process to evaluate the impacts of this mega development, taking a look first and primarily at the potential displacement risk, the risk of indirect displacement from bringing in 961 market rate units. But there are clearly other impacts and other ways in which we need to move forward as we see this new opportunities coming to South Los Angeles and in formerly disinvested areas to ensure that we get an adequate return. It should not just be about a developer. I don't care that he's black. I don't care that he's rich. I don't care he's from Chicago, coming in and making money that are extending costs to the taxpayers here and displacing them. We need to find a way to have development without displacement. We need to find a way to ensure the developers come in and play by the same rules in South LA as we would expect them to play in West LA. I encourage the council to adopt this resolution fully.
Thank you. Let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Let's pull up item 1. Let's prepare to vote on this item. Please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 10, we voted on earlier. If I could please ask that to be forthwith.
Okay, without objection.
Thank you.
Let's take up item 16. If I could have the speakers, we're gonna reopen public comment on this item. I'm gonna try to get to every speaker. So the sooner you get to the center aisle, the better. So let's get Walter Dominguez, Annie Gagan, Brad Kane. Come on up, Brad. Valorie Geegan, and Mr. Goodman. So let's start. Just identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Walter Dominguez, and I'm on the board of the South Carthay Neighborhood Association, which is located between Olympic Boulevard, La Cienega, Pico, and Crescent Heights. In 1985, a number of people from our neighborhood stood in front of the city council here and were overjoyed when you voted to make our neighborhood the second HPOZ, Historic Preservation Overlay Zone, in the city. And we're very concerned about SB 827, that it will undo all the work that has been done to not only preserve our neighborhood, but to help keep neighborhoods throughout the city cohesive. We urge the City Council to support the resolution against SB 827, and we feel that it's very important that we maintain our local control over our zoning and let us be the ones to guide the destiny of our city and not people in Sacramento. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker. Brad, you're right there. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President Herb Wesson, Council Member Koretz, Council Member Rue, for leading this charge. I am president of the South Carthage Neighborhood Association, president of the Pico Neighborhood Council. I now made sure that you have our CIS in, but the point is we really need to maintain local control because the SB 827 really represents nothing more than trickle-down affordable housing. Trickle-down being the discredited idea, if you give things to people, good things will happen. There's no connection between the affordable housing and the taking away of the local control that we have. If this measure passes the State Assembly and the State Senate, we will lose our HPOZ, as Walter said. We will lose our beautiful neighborhoods. We will have gentrification with no benefit. I urge you to support it, and I thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Is that Annie?
Yes. Good morning.
Please come forward. Good to see you again.
Good morning. Thank you again for supporting Councilmember Rue's resolution. This is a horrible bill. I cannot imagine the state dictating land use and development. I love Los Angeles. I love our neighborhoods. I love the character of our neighborhoods. This is not going to help affordable housing. It is going to cause displacement and gentrification. That's one end of the spectrum. It will also destroy our single-family neighborhoods, which, by the way, are comprised of very diverse people. They're not just wealthy communities. And our historic HPOZs on the National Historic Register will be threatened and pretty much demolished. They're not protected. I applaud you for opposing this. I hope the rest of the city council members will also applaud it. We have a great city, and our city leaders best know what suits our city, as do our communities working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good morning, council members. My name is Valerie Keegan, and I'm here today to speak in support of the resolution. I'd like to thank you, Councilmember Wesson, President Wesson, and David Rue, and also Councilmember Koretz. I urge all of you, please, to support this resolution and oppose SB 827. I am in one of the historic neighborhoods off Sunset Boulevard. We will be destroyed because we have a bus stop. We film here in the neighborhood. We support LA. Economically and socially, we're family oriented. We've got mature trees, all kinds of things. We hear a lot about getting people out of their cars, but what we're not hearing very much about is the environmental apocalypse that this would bring upon us. I urge you, please support the resolution, and I thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you. And before Mr. Goodman begins, if I could get Jill Stewart, Mickey Jackson, Fabian Gonzalez, David Gonzalez, and Sophia Guerra. Mr. Goodman.
Damian Goodman, Crenshaw Subway Coalition, Housing is a Human Rights and Black Community, Clergy, and Labor Alliance. In strong support of this resolution, we thank you, Councilmember Rue, Council President Wesson. This bill is not a housing bill. It's a real estate bill intended to fuel the speculation and worsen the housing crisis that is leading to gentrification, displacement, and homelessness. There are undoubtedly parts of this state that have a severe jobs housing imbalance like Silicon Valley, but SB 827 is not narrowed in its scope toward it. Very little of Cupertino is upzoned, yet all of Crenshaw is upzoned. How is that fair? I've spent the better part of my adult life fighting for transit expansion. But I nor you could be transit advocates if we knew that with it came a Robert Moses-like remaking and wrecking ball for our residential communities. Our own planning department says that this bill would have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. That is not the basis of housing justice. That is the basis of lawsuits to correct racial discrimination. Lastly, we invited Scott Wiener to come to South LA to talk about this bill about impact to communities.
Thank you. Next speaker. Identify yourself.
Jill Stewart, Coalition to Preserve LA. I've been living in Mr. Blumenfield's district for about 18 years. I know the area really well, every building in Canoga Park and Woodland Hills. Senate Bill 827, which we are so glad you're going to be opposing, would wipe out affordable housing, what's left in the West Valley along all of the busy boulevards that have houses and smaller, older apartment buildings, all wiped out, demolition allowed. And we think you guys are incredible for doing leadership on this, Councilmember Wesson and Councilmember Rue. We know now that Scott Wiener, who wrote the bill, that his idea of creating Wiener World, it's not a place any of us want a ticket to. In fact, I think you know that he's had a grudge match with San Francisco, which refused to allow him to upzone all of San Francisco. So he decided to make a statewide bill. We understand that LA is collateral damage in this battle Scott Wiener is having to try to upzone all of San Francisco. He's off his rocker, I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mickey Jackson. I'm with Coalition to Preserve LA. Housing is a human right. I live in Highland Park, arguably ground zero of gentrification. NPR thought so when they did a special a few years ago. You know, all the people who own houses are not rich, and they don't live in the hills, and they don't all live in the valley. A lot of LA homeowners, and for many years what made LA kind of wonderfully unique is we had a lot of low-income homeowners. And in my neighborhood, in many neighborhoods, families would buy. The children would grow up and they'd buy a few houses down. It was wonderful. This sort of thing that takes the power away from the city, it's a power grab from the citizens and our elected representatives of the city, is disastrous. And I somehow think the wealthy will come out okay, but I don't think the not wealthy will come out okay.
Thank you. Next speaker, please identify yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Fabian Gonzalez. I work with SAGE. We are a nonprofit organization around tenant rights, healthy housing, and equitable development. And we're here to support City Council to oppose SB 827. This is a development on steroids. It's going to destroy the communities that we are serving. It's going to undermine a lot of the affordable housing that we've been fighting for such a long time. I run a tenant clinic every Tuesdays, and I can't tell you how many times tenants are coming to our office talking about the pressures of displacement and how community residents are disappearing from our neighborhood in South Central LA. It's been traditionally working class Latinos and African Americans, and we want to continue to stay in this neighborhood. We want better neighborhoods, but the same neighbors. And under this new bill, it's going to destroy our community. And again, we oppose this bill, SB 827. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good morning. I'm David Gonzalez with VICA, the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing over 400 Los Angeles businesses and nonprofit groups. VICA strongly supports Senate Bill 827, which will spur much-needed housing development throughout California by reducing barriers to residential construction near major transit stops. Skyrocketing housing costs are increasingly pushing working and middle-class families out of our city and state. In fact, California needs to double the number of housing units built each year to keep prices from rising faster than the national average. Existing local zoning regulations fail to adequately address the housing shortage, and new development frequently gets obstructed by short-sighted, self-interested NIMBY groups. Although SB 827 sets a state minimum zoning requirement, all proposed projects would still be subject to the local planning review and approval process governed by this council. SB 827 will help us build much-needed housing while preserving local rules on environmental review, protections for rent-controlled units, and affordable housing developments. We urge you to oppose this motion and support
Thank you.
SB 827.
Thank you. Next speaker. And after her, let's get Aziola Sakara, Rachel Lucky, Olivia Lee and Ruth Scribner, please, and Susan Hunter. Please identify yourself.
Thank you. Sofia Guerra, Coalition for Economic Survival. We are fully opposed to SB 827. SB 827 could undo much of our work for over 45 years, like with winning rent control and preserving affordable housing. This bill is horrible, unamendable, and should be killed. Yes, we need more housing, especially affordable housing, but this is not the answer. In fact, this bill would likely worsen our crisis by increasing evictions and displacement, the loss of RSO units, and accelerating gentrification. Plus, this bill does not guarantee the housing built will be affordable. This is why CES, the LA County Democratic Party, the League of California Cities, Sierra Club, ACT LA, Community Coalition, and many more oppose it. We urge support of this motion to add LA to this growing list of opposition to SB 827. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hey, good morning. Osceola Sankara with ACT LA. We're also here in support of the resolution to oppose SB 827. And, our city's made a lot of great progress in recent years getting greater density near transit tied to affordable housing requirements. And it's good policy, it's model policy, it's something that other cities across the state should look at. And SB 827 it's the wrong approach, even as amended. It mandates the upzoning near transit, but then leaves tenant protections and anti-displacement measures just optional, up to the local cities. 90% of jurisdictions in the state don't even have RSO. So this is a really, really bad bill, and we're encouraged that City Council is putting forward this resolution. We hope that you vote yes to support it. And I live in Councilmember Harris Dawson's district. I use transit every day, and we need to see much more affordable housing in our neighborhoods across the city and not less. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please identify yourself.
Good morning, esteemed council members. Thank you, council members Rue and Wesson, for your leadership in this matter. My name is Rachel Rose Lucky, and it is an honor to stand here before you representing the Rampart Village Neighborhood Council as its secretary to speak in defense of our local sovereignty. Los Angeles is made up of small towns inside a big city, a network of differing neighborhoods, blending from one to the next while sharing a sense of unity around the vision of a city filled with angels. Each neighborhood demonstrating its own unique set of planning and land use needs. And it is those stakeholders, not a misguided senator from San Francisco, who intimately understand those needs. The Los Angeles Department of City Planning is already undertaking updates to our general plan, and our community plans are being updated. We support the resolution here today, and we do oppose SB 827. Thank you.
Next speaker, please identify yourself.
Good morning, Olivia Lee with the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. We're here in opposition of this resolution and in support of SB 827. We sent a letter in last week with our thoughts. Besides my official capacity, I'm also here to speak personally on this issue. I'm a first-generation American. I'm an immigrant, and I'm a millennial that works full-time. Yet I cannot afford to live in the city where I work. In fact, I drive at least an hour every day one way to get to my job here. I live with my family in my childhood home, and I absolutely recognize I'm lucky enough to have a roof over my head. I can only imagine how it is for those not as fortunate as I am. My generation is burdened with student tuition hikes, student loans, and the Great Recession upon graduation. This housing crisis is personal. We cannot afford to live here. This bill may not solve all of our housing issues, but is a great step in the right direction to build more housing to address the supply and affordability problems. For LA to oppose this bill indicates that we are not serious in eradicating the housing homelessness crisis and that it is not a priority for our city. I urge you to vote against this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please identify yourself.
My name is Ruth Scribner, and I live in Council District 10, and I urge the council today to adopt the resolution in opposition to SB 827. With SB 827, we're enabling a faceless, distant bureaucracy in Sacramento dictate where and what gets built in our communities without any input for the residents, their elected officials, and local government. All this is being done under the guise that they know what is best for us. I say they do not. I'm here for I love this rich, vibrant city I have the good fortune to live in. We have problems, but they will be solved only if the actual citizens of the city have this right to weigh in on the issues that matter to them. We are being asked, or rather coerced, into giving up that right. Los Angeles is a large and complex city, and enforcing one-size-fits-all ideology, and make no mistake, it is being fueled by corporate money and power, will drown out the very voices and override the needs of the people that it pretends to care about. Frankly, in short, any legislation that tells citizens to basically shut up is highly suspect. Thank you.
Thank you. And before the next speak, you come, but before you start, quit moving. Before you start, if I could get Brian Wartring, Stephen Luffman, Dale Kendall, Jorge Castaneda. Yes, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Susan Hunter, Coalition to Preserve Los Angeles, and I'm here to say that we have to oppose 827. It might work out logistically in San Francisco, but it would not work out here. As a person who actually utilizes and completely depends on public transportation, I am terrified to hear that a bus would have to actually hit major transit stops every 15 minutes. That is not physically possible in the city of Los Angeles. To put it in context, in the 1990s, Domino's Pizza said, "We will deliver a pizza to you in half an hour or it's free," and all hell broke loose. This bill is asking our transit system to do the same thing in half the time, and they think it's a good idea. As a person who utilizes public transportation, I can tell you that unless you are able to come up with the funds to be able to actually have buses run every 15 minutes, this is not going to be a feasible idea and would actually end up in lawsuits, and people could actually get hurt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Watchering. I'm a resident of CD13. I come to you as a rail and transit fan and a density advocate. And I'd just like to say that 827 is the absolutely wrong way to go about growing our economy here in California and is a real misstep. And I would really like for you to support Rue's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could get Brian Harris and Marcia Hanscom. Yes, sir.
Hi, Stephen Luffman. I'm a board member of Mid-City West, so I'm not representing them at this time. I want to thank Council Members Rue and Wesson for bringing this motion forward. 827 is a bad bill. It incentivizes luxury development, the exact opposite of what we should be building. This is not good planning. This is what we should be doing is building affordable housing near transit, and this gives no incentive for that. As a preservationist, I would also like to say that this is going to effectively destroy the Historic Cultural Monument bill, which in no way says that you cannot demolish. It just puts controls over demolishing it. So it would basically void all of our most precious buildings in the city. Thank you. Please vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, council members. I'm here representing Save Beverly Fairfax. I feel SB 827 is a broad bill that tries to make a one-size-fits-all. San Francisco, Santa Barbara, and Los Angeles, for example, have different needs, and decisions should be left at the local level. At the local level, they can decide what is better for our community. Also, this bill may be abused by developers regarding rent-stabilized apartments and McMansions. Please support the resolution to oppose Senate Bill 827. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hello. My name is Jorge Castaneda. I'm with the Coalition to Preserve LA. I wish to thank the Rules, Elections, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee's opposition to this Twilight Zone episode known as SB 827. Aside from San Francisco's Planning Commissioner Catherine Moore calling SB 827, quote, the antithesis of planning and a dictatorial Trump-like bid to sap local authority, aside from former LA City Planner Dick Platkin describing SB 827 as shockingly anti-democratic, it shuts down elected officials and community members from the decision-making process. Aside from 37 affordable housing, tenants' rights, and transit equity groups signing on to ACT LA's letter opposing SB 827, aside from all that, I implore my misguided brothers and sisters at California EMB to read up on this subject and change their minds.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Identify yourself.
Hi, yes, my name is Brian Harris. I want to thank Council Members Rue and Council Member Wesson and my Council Member Koretz for this resolution and the support of it. There's an epidemic in this country, the epidemic of powerful and wealthy people silencing those who are not in as advantageous of positions. This bill silences public input, community and neighborhood decision-making, and is a giveaway to speculators and developers pushing the very people who take public transit away from it. I hope that you will support this resolution. I have two popular words I would like to associate with this sneaky bill masquerading as a transit and environmental bill. Time's up.
Okay, thank you. So, did Marcia Hanscom come up? Marcia from the Sierra Club? She's not here. Okay, Mr. City Attorney or Madam Clerk, that closes the public comment on this item. We've taken every card. I'd like to recognize at this point Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I really want to thank all the speakers for coming here today. And of course, thank you, Mr. President, for your support on this motion. So, colleagues, we all know that we are in a housing crisis. The challenge before us is how to solve it. This is not our first time in the housing crunch, and there are many lessons to be learned from our past. Los Angeles has a long and painful history of displacement in the name of progress, and of well-intended bills that uproot communities and destroy neighborhoods. SB 827 is one such bill. The intent behind SB 827 is good, and I support initiatives to create more affordable housing. But in effect, SB 827 would mean massive displacement. It would be a housing boom for a privileged few and the eviction notices for everyone else. Under SB 827, every street with a bus stop is a transit corridor, open for rezoning. This bill is a massive giveaway to real estate developers masked as transit-oriented bill. And now, also central to this bill is that it eliminates local control and gives LA planning policy to Sacramento. It is no different than the efforts of the past that allow big development to ignore community voices. We need to fix our affordable housing crisis. We need to continue updating our community plans for a thoughtful and denser housing. We do not need SB 827, and I encourage a aye vote today on the resolution before us, which will oppose SB 827.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Rue, for bringing this forward. I think we have a competition to decide who hates this bill more, me or you. I think it's a close call. I went to Sacramento a couple weeks ago, specifically just to lobby against Wiener bills. SB 905, which would be a 4 a.m. bar bill, which I believe will create hundreds of injuries, many deaths between 2 and 4 a.m. and later. And SB 827, which will be as disruptive as was mentioned. I think Mr. Wiener is going to succeed at creating a great fundraising base for himself. Developers, bar owners, restaurant owners, nightclub owners, that's a lot of money, but I think he'll do a lot of damage at the same time. I'm a historic preservationist. I have a number of historic preservation overlay zone districts in my district, and this bill will allow 85-foot structures on a single-family home lot. This will be absolutely devastating to historic preservation. It'll be devastating to single-family home neighborhoods. I really think it'll destroy the character of Los Angeles, and it makes no sense. There could be a compromise, at least in which I think a discussion could be had. This bill, as it stands, I think is insanity. I think this is the craziest bill I've ever seen. And so I ask that we oppose this, and honestly, the business community usually comes out for things that make sense for the business community. I usually can see where they're coming from. I'm shocked and dismayed that we have business groups supporting this bill, because I understand the business perspective, but this will absolutely destroy the character of Los Angeles in the effort to build more housing. I think there are proposals that would allow us to build more market rate housing and not destroy the city. I might not be for them always, but this one is pure insanity. I ask my colleagues all to unanimously vote against this and send a strong message. And by the way, just because Mr. Wiener's from San Francisco, you don't see a pilot program to start this in San Francisco, because I don't think they want it destroying their historic properties any more than we do.
Mr. Bonnet.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Rue, thank you for introducing this resolution, and thanks, Mr. Wesson, to the committee for the recommendation to oppose the Wiener bill. I support Mr. Rue. I oppose this bill, as does the West Side Regional Alliance of Councils, which is a collection of every council in my district and some in Mr. Koretz's, as does the Sierra Club, as does the active transportation community, groups like Investing in Place and LACBC, as does Coalition for Economic Survival, and pretty much every community-based anti-poverty group in the city of Los Angeles. This is a bad bill, and this bill overreaches dramatically, and it ignores the fact that Los Angeles is not a flat, sterile map, and that planning is not just theoretical. But this is a city of neighborhoods, and the way we plan them and the way we manage growth affects the environment in which our children grow, the places that we work, and the places that we play. This is a bad bill, but it is an absolutely unsurprising bill. This bill was inevitable because our current system is, in some ways, as bad as this bill. Our current system does not protect against gentrification and displacement. Our current system is also not providing the affordable housing that we need for our next generation, for our children and for the people who are moving here. And this bill absolutely, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator movies, will be back. Each legislative session, Sacramento gets stronger and more aggressive about taking away local control and doing things like this. And we will probably defeat this bill this year, but it will probably be back in some form again next year until we get a handle on the housing crisis here in Los Angeles. We won't get a handle on it as long as we're calling each other names, as long as we're yelling YIMBY and WIMBY at each other. We need to have a conversation about how we get the housing that we need. Not a week goes by where I do not hear from a constituent who bemoans the fact that their child is graduating from college and can't live here, or whose parent is aging out and needs a place to stay, and there is nothing affordable here in Los Angeles. We need to do a number of things, and Sacramento needs to do a number of them first. They need to fix the Ellis Act. They need to repeal Costa-Hawkins. We probably need here in Los Angeles inclusionary zoning, and we need far more anti-displacement and anti-gentrification rules. But let's be clear, we need more housing. We need more affordable housing here in Los Angeles. And as we update our community plans, we need to say at the start of each community plan, where are people going to live? Los Angeles' population is not going to shrink. We continue to have children. People continue to move here. And we need to figure out in each community plan, where are people going to live? We can't freeze our city in amber and pretend that we don't need more housing. But we also can't blow up our neighborhoods and bury it underneath the Sacramento overreach that is at the heart of this bill. So thank you, Mr. Rue. Glad to support you on this one.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as we've said, the substance of this bill makes sense. We increased the supply of housing by building more density around transportation corridors. That makes sense. But what's fundamentally wrong with this bill, as has been mentioned as well, it takes away local control, and land use decisions, planning decisions are fundamental to cities and municipalities functioning. Our master plan on planning, and from that our community plans, it's one of the primary roles of local government, and this takes from that. But what I'm more, and quite frankly, the state does play a role in that sometimes. They do give us certain incentives and provides ways for us to accommodate our master plans and community plans. But what's wrong with this is that it gives away a lot without giving a lot. It doesn't give back to incentivize more affordable housing. The affordable housing component should have been the driving force for this and say, we would allow you to do this if you build more affordable housing or incentivize affordable housing, perhaps some percentage or something else. But the fact of the matter is that our controls, as Mr. Bonin stated, is to do that in our community plans. We are now, thankfully, going to update our community plans every 6 years. We see a lot more activity on that end. But the fact is that they're going to come back pretty much status quo. They're going to come back to the way it's always been, and it's not going to be affordable housing and the type of housing we need. They're going to be well distributed. Because even if we defeat this bill and we say we want more affordable housing, well, let's take those battles on. Let's challenge ourselves to see and build the affordable housing well distributed throughout the city, and we're not currently doing that right now. The community plans that we're going to get back are going to continue to protect those neighborhoods that never get any, and we continue to centralize it in certain parts of the neighborhood, and that is not good for all Angelenos, for all of us to live together, work together, and understand one another a lot better. So the intent of this bill is good. Problems, takes away local control, doesn't give back as much in allowing them to do what they want to do. But we have to find more ways and challenge ourselves here locally. How will we accomplish the intent of this within our tools? And it seems like we're not doing that in our current process of updating our community plans.
Mr. Buscaino.
Colleagues, just like homelessness, this housing issue is something that we all need to tackle. Manhattan Beach needs more housing. Bell Gardens needs more housing. Santa Ana needs to build more housing. No city in this state is exempt from this crisis. Everyone is facing skyrocketing rents and housing prices that are forcing our residents to move further and further away from job centers, which in turn compounds many of the other problems that we face as a city. In fact, Andres just reminded me, he's here visiting us from spring break, a former intern of mine. He's at Berkeley. He's got his students, a few of his colleagues, who are living on the streets today in RVs because they cannot afford rent while attending Berkeley. However, maintaining local control is critical and is essential to the function of cities and city government. I appreciate the catalyst that this bill is trying to accomplish. It's too blunt a tool as it's currently written and as it's being rewritten. I would actually encourage city staff, along with the mayor's office, to continue to work with the author to find ways to incentivize building more housing without eliminating local control. We're in a position of considering this bill because while few cities are trying to tackle the problem, too many others have their head in the sand and are ignoring the problem of pushing the burden onto neighboring cities. The issue, I feel, is not with zoning capacity. It's with the process of approving new homes. We here as a city have done and moved forward abilities to fast track some of these projects of building more homes in our city. We've done it through JJJ, HHH, as Mr. Weezar indicated, the ability to move forward on updating our community plans, but we're failing to build enough housing in both big cities and small, and that's a fact. What we have here in this bill is taking a chainsaw approach to the patient instead of a scalpel, and that clearly is not the solution. So I support what's before us and the committee's recommendation to oppose Mr. Wiener's bill.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Rue, for introducing this bill. Clearly, SB 827 would not work under any circumstance as drafted in the 13th District, nor in the city of Los Angeles. But I will say that the goals of SB 827 are laudable. Environmentally sustainable development and growth, limiting urban sprawl, easing traffic gridlock through placing density along transit corridors. I feel that with the rejection of Measure S last year, that was a real endorsement across the city to accomplish those goals and empower us at the local level to do just that. What I would like to see Mr. Wiener do is work with his colleagues to bring us a state bill that we could support. Because clearly, as Mr. Bonin said, there are going to be a lot more of these because we are in a crisis of unprecedented breadth in terms of affordable housing and homelessness. And we absolutely have to get in on the game of building more affordable and preserving what we have. What I'd like to see the state come to us with that I would wholeheartedly support, and I met in person with Mr. Wiener about 3 weeks ago to discuss these details after he introduced the amendments to SB 827, which, by the way, hasn't even been heard in committee yet, so we should keep that in mind. But we need a bill that preserves local control, that protects our historic preservation overlay zones. And by the way, we're probably going to establish more of those because we do not need to sacrifice our history and our historic resources for the sake of growth and how we evolve into the future. I firmly believe that. We need a bill with ironclad tenant protections. We definitely need the state to be on board for repealing Costa-Hawkins. I get asked that all the time. And we as a council get slammed constantly for Ellis Act invocations. It is a state bill, and we need to lobby our state legislators to take a look and revisit Costa-Hawkins so we can preserve more of the rent-stabilized units that we have because we are losing hundreds of them per week, thousands of them per year, and that's a real problem. With that, there are also a lot of frivolous CEQA lawsuits that are absolutely hurting my ability in the 13th District to produce more affordable housing. So we need some CEQA reform at the state level to help us produce more affordable housing and preserve the affordable housing that we have. And I don't mind the hisses or the boos, but just take a look at some of the surface parking lots in Hollywood, and you'll know what I'm talking about. All of us are in on the support of keeping people housed and preserving the affordable housing stock that we have, but we need state allies. So I'm not going to stand here and demonize Scott Wiener or anyone else, but I am going to compel them to work with local jurisdictions so that we can collaborate on helping solve the crises of our era, and that is the affordable housing crises and the displacement crises. It's a problem, and we see it in all of our neighborhoods. So I will support this, but ask for the state to come back with a bill that we can support. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Kokoria.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It should really be self-evident that Los Angeles and all of California faces a crisis in housing, faces a crisis of affordability. And Mr. Bonin, I think, very well laid out some of the conversations that need to be had in order to address that very vexing problem. The problem is that when you have legislation like this, every single one of those conversations ends immediately. There is nothing further to discuss. And, you know, about almost half of us have been members of the legislature, and we know the way this works. You know, a group comes in to Sacramento, into the Capitol, tells members of the legislature how smart they are. This is a really important issue that we need you to address, and the masters of the universe know better than the members of city councils across California how to fix these problems. That's how it works. And, you know, the truth is, Stockton is not the same as Sherman Oaks. Bakersfield is not the same as neighborhoods in South Los Angeles. That we have a vast, rich diversity of economic interests and types of neighborhoods and job bases in California, and you cannot legislate land use from the state capitol. You just simply can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. If Sacramento wants to step up and help us addressing our affordable housing crisis, there's a bunch of ways they can do it. Some have been mentioned by my colleagues. They could start providing more funding to local governments' affordable housing trust funds so that we can start investing in some of the projects. Now that the state budget is under control and has a surplus, let's start spending some of that money on affordability of housing. Mr. O'Farrell mentioned, and he is exactly right to mention, when we want to develop infill housing density, That is an improvement to the environment. It allows us to do smart transit planning. It allows us to do things that benefit for the environment. So let's keep in mind that the California Environmental Quality Act is about environmental quality and not other things. So if we can have the help of Sacramento in incentivizing and enabling infill housing development that improves our environmental quality to get through the CEQA process without absurd, baseless challenges that interfere with it, then that's what Sacramento should be doing to help us address our affordable housing problem. There's a lot of things that they could do, but serving as 120 council members or planning directors to tell us how we should plan is not what they should be spending their time and attention doing. So I should mention, too, that Los Angeles, by the way, is kind of leading the way in transit-oriented communities. Mr. Bonin and I sit on the Metro Board, where we have a 30% affordability requirement for housing that's developed on Metro land. We are focusing on using property around Metro stations already to create greater density, to enable our ridership to be able to afford housing and use the system at the same time. We're already doing that. So state mandates just interfere with the kind of innovation, the kind of creativity, the kind of neighborhood-specific policy making that councils are best able to make. So all of you who are here today, I'm glad that you came out here today to encourage us to pass a resolution opposing this bill. That's great. But all this does is it adds one more line of opponents onto a long list of opponents or proponents that the members of the legislature look at. So your work is not done by being here today. We're going to pass this today. We're going to pass this resolution today. And then right after we pass this, you need to go back to work. All of you need to contact your assembly member, contact your state senator, and tell them what you think about this and why this affects you and your community. Then you have to do something else. You got to get engaged in your neighborhood. You got to go to your neighborhood council, and you need to get to work with us and with our neighborhood councils in having the exact conversations Mr. Bonin and Mr. O'Farrell and others have discussed, so that as we update our community plans, as we develop policy to address this crisis, we're doing it in a way that maximizes the development of affordable housing and at the same time strikes the balance of protecting our communities and neighborhoods. But that depends upon you staying engaged in this conversation. So, Mr. President, I ask for an aye vote on this resolution, and then let's get busy with the next steps that need to take place as soon as we're done.
Thank you. Mr. Sadilla.
Mr. President, much has been said, and it is true. We should look to the state to reevaluate Costa-Hawkins. We should look to the state to reevaluate the Alice Act. We should look to the state to address concerns about the abuse of CEQA. CEQA is fine legislation. It's robust, and it leads the nation in protecting our environment. But it is abused when unions use it against other unions. It is abused when NIMBYs, like in my district, one of the first weeks that I was here, we voted to build affordable housing, 80 units on 3 blocks, 3 city-owned parking lots of affordable housing, and a local NIMBY and a lawyer filed a CEQA claim. And all they've done is delay that project for 4 years, made it not pencil out, and have frustrated the efforts of us to build affordable housing in our district. So there are things that Sacramento can do. We need to look at SB 2 and put some teeth in it to make sure that all the cities are doing their fair share, so that Los Angeles isn't the only place where homeless people come. Mr. Krikorian, you're right. People should talk to their assembly members. They should talk to their senators. But they should also come to these neighborhood meetings. We had one last week where people were organized to resist the building of housing on city-owned parking lots. And so there is much to be done. And Mr. President, let me suggest that we start by calling the question. I thank you.
I'm going to call on Mr. Koretz. Mr. Koretz, you sure you want to? You're the last? Do you want us to just, do you think that maybe these people want to see us just vote on this?
No. No, I have one important point, which is I met with
I
a
didn't
number
think that was going to work, but I
No,
gave
it was a good
shot.
try. I think it's an important message, which was I met with a number of our LA County delegation, and I thought we would find a lot of people that got it and were strongly opposed. Our colleagues that represent the same areas in the state legislature were very circumspect on both the bills that I was lobbying against. In fact, some of them were leaning towards it. So I think we need to realize that the biggest problem in support of this bill could be our own local members. And not just the council needs to lobby them, but they need to hear from everybody here. They need to hear from their constituents throughout LA County, throughout LA City, because those could be some of the very bad votes that advance this otherwise. So I thought that was an important point to make. I assume this is going to pass unanimously, which will send a strong message, but we all need to work it if we want to defeat this terrible bill.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Koretz. It was riveting. Now, I'm sorry, I'm just failing fast here. So with that said, that ends the debate on this issue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Okay, let's move and take some general public comment cards. Irma Rincon, Ruby Rivera, Jessica Guzman. And if you already spoke on the other item, like I believe Mr. Brian Harris already did, Annie Gagan already did, so there's no Tom Walsh. But anyway, when I call your name, please come up. Sergio Sorza. If I called your name, come on up to the mic. Veronica Chavez. Come on up. Yes, ma'am. Identify yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruby Rivera. I'm here with the Investing Youth Campaign. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank Council Members Huizar and Rodriguez for introducing a motion to create a youth development task force. This is important since LA is home to 800,000 youth ages 10 to 24, a majority of which come from low-income communities of color. LA's youth development approach is fractured and lacks an organized structure. This task force is important since 200,000 youth live in poverty, over 3,000 are homeless, and several $100 million are spent in arresting and incarcerating youth. I hope this task force is the starting point to create a department that helps young people live up to their potential. More so, I hope that the task force includes community voices and youth advocates to ensure the needs and concerns of young people are heard. I have no doubt that City Council will support this idea. And I, again, want to thank Councilmember Huizar and Councilmember Rodriguez for carrying this important motion.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Please come forward, identify yourself.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Sergio Sorza, and I reside in District Number 10. We are here with a coalition of workers and as well as Unite Here Local 11 to ask you to please pass the short-term rental ordinance. Over the last 3 years, we have lost 4,999 housing units. I'll repeat that. 4,999 housing units. There is without a doubt a housing crisis in the city of Los Angeles. You just had a discussion as to what you can do as a city council to combat this issue, and we are asking you, you stood by us in the past, you've been great allies of Unite Here Local 11, and we're asking for your support again. The time is now. So please pass the short-term rental ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Identify yourself, please.
Good morning. My name is Veronica Chavez, and I work at Disneyland Hotel. I live in Anaheim, and a short-term rental was a big problem in my city as well. I live 2 blocks from Disney in the convention center, and we saw several homes to go to Airbnb. I drove here today because it's important for all the cities to put a stop to this. We need to protect our homes. Please pass the short-term rental ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm looking for Sumi Flus, Claudia Aguilera, Carla Andare. Yes.
Hi, City Council. My name is Irma Rincon. I work at the Hilton Pasadena for 6 years. I had to move from my home of 8 years because the rental increased too much. My new neighborhood, there is a house that has a for rent sign, but it never gets rented. Instead, we see people coming in and out with suitcase all the time because it's on Airbnb. This is taking homes from people like me. And I ask you, please, to pass the short-term rental ordinance as soon as possible. Thank you. And I ask you again, please pass the short-term rental ordinance as soon as possible. Thank you.
Is there a Mr. or Mrs. Mahmouz Daza? I can't pronounce it. Mr. Walsh, you already spoke. I called Tom Walsh, not John Walsh. Yes, identify yourself.
My name is Jessica Guzman. I work at Lux City Center Hotel. Now I live on Pandel because the rent around here is too higher. I have to drive 4 hours a day. So please pass the short-term ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning. Hello, my name is Carla Andara, and I work for the Courtyard and Residence Inn at LA Live. I'm one of the percentages of families suffering from homelessness. I believe Airbnb is detrimental to our community, not only for rental costs has increased, but a limited amount of availability for housing for minorities. I have lived in the community of Echo Park neighborhood for 38 years. I am a single mother with a stable job and a decent wage. I can't even afford rent now in my own community. Airbnb has invaded my community and is pushing families out, making it impossible for me to find affordable housing. I don't want my children to suffer from homelessness due to any organization like Airbnb that doesn't care for any community. Thank you.
So I need Daria Ovida or Ovide. I need James Russell, Richard Robinson, Zelina Zeltzer, Nick Kerber. Yes, Tom.
Yes, good morning, President Wesson, members of the council. Thomas Walsh with Unite Here Local 11. You know why we are here today. It's been over 2 years. You gave us your commitment that you would do something about this urgent problem with short-term rentals in our city. Enough time has gone by. We need for you to be true to your commitment. We need for you to take action. Los Angeles should be a city that's leading on this issue, but we're not. New York has already done the right thing. San Francisco has already done the right thing. Even our sister cities, Santa Monica and West Hollywood, have done the right thing. I heard each one of you and your comments about homelessness and about the crisis of affordable housing. There's no other issue that you could do immediately to relieve that than pass the ordinance for the short-term rental. We expect for you to do it. We ask for you to do it. Please, no more delays. Thank you.
Identify yourself.
Come again?
If you'd identify yourself.
Okay. My name is James Russell. I work at the downtown Biltmore, and I live in Koreatown. Mr. Rue, I think that the folks, including myself in that area, would really benefit from this. Right now, what I pay for housing is not worth what I am getting. But with the housing market, It's almost impossible for me to find affordable housing that's livable. In my previous apartment, I dealt with gas leaks. The stove, the oven, and the heater were all leaking. There were roaches, there were rats, there were holes in the building, and still that landlord was able to charge me $1,100 a month. I finally had to sue in order to get compensated for the horrible conditions there. Now, when trying to move, every apartment I looked at got picked up within a week, and now I'm forced to pay $300 a month more in rent. And that's just simply because that's how much rent has gone up over the last 3 years. Now, many people that you're going to hear from on the Airbnb side are forced to rent out their apartments and homes in order to afford their rent. I don't think that that is right. I think everybody should be able to afford get affordable housing.
Next speaker. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Daria Ovide. I live in a 12-unit rent-stabilized apartment building in historic Filipino town in Mr. Sedia's district. You know, and I used to just be scared of being evicted if my building went to condos, but now I'm also worried about the abuse of TORS, the Transient Occupancy Residential Structure designation, right? So in a November 24th, 2017 article in the LA Times titled, "Housing Activists Raise Alarm About Turning Over Apartments for Short Stays," the LA Times writes about a downtown apartment building called Level that got a TORS designation and went from an apartment building to short-term rentals with no public hearing. This is an example of the kind of pressure that the LA housing market is under because of short-term rentals, and I ask you to please take action, please vote on the short-term rental legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come and identify yourself.
Hello, my name is Yelena Zelter. I'm a member of Unite Local 11 and a long-term housing advocate, and I live in CD10, your district, Mr. Wesson. I'm here today to highlight another issue, which is that of party houses, which is an issue as a result of short-term rentals. Short-term rental sites have led to the proliferation of party houses, which not only can take affordable units off the market, but pose public safety risks. I'm going to quote for you from a Daily News article written a couple of weeks ago. After months of unruly parties, speeding cars, and unfamiliar guests frequenting their typically quiet neighborhood, residents who live near the home on Valley Vista Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, where a home invasion, robbery, and double shooting occurred early Wednesday, were already primed for something violent to happen. Los Angeles police are still searching for the two men they believe robbed several people at the location, which is listed on a short-term rental website, Airbnb. Officials said the two suspects armed with
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And I'll be looking for Richard. Get in line. You're next, Richard Robinson. Alex Sandoval. Danielle Wilson. Yes, sir. Identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Nick Gerber. I'm an organizer and with Local 11 and a resident of CD10 in your district, Mr. Wesson. I just want to share another example of these party houses, or it really have become party hubs in whole neighborhoods. And I want to share an example from Bel Air in your area, Mr. Corretz. So this is from a Curbed article. Jeffrey Yohai, a real estate investor and Paul Manafort's former son-in-law, has been ordered to stop using his Bel Air pad for parties. LA County Superior Court Judge Craig Carlin issued a temporary restraining order Tuesday barring Yohai from advertising or promoting his Stradella Road property as a party house and from offering to rent it for such purposes. The 5-bedroom home has been available for rent on Airbnb for $1,299 a night and was marketed as a private sanctuary with must-see sunsets. It looks like the listing has since been taken down, but when it was active, the description said that events and parties are welcome, according to the Bel Air Association. Bel Air residents say the home attracted partiers who hosted all-night ragers. So please pass the...
Thank you. Richard. Richard.
Members, I had written a speech, but I just simply want to say in a minute here or so that at 5th and Main in downtown Los Angeles, there's a it's unbelievable. There's a 12-story inner city hotel which would be an ideal place for those who are low income, 1,200, 1,500. With a remodeling program to convert that hotel into a community awareness treatment service. Now, what I'm trying to say is something I've said several times before. In San Francisco, it was proven you can end homelessness by taking inner city hotels and converting them into homes for poor and low-income folks. Thank you. At 5th and Main.
Thank you, Richard. If I could get Dina Paradas, Danielle Wilson, Danielle Jones, Samir Sante, Jeremy Blasi, Juan Mendoza. Please come forward if I called your name, please.
Buenos días.
Could you wait 1 minute?
Okay, go ahead. Buenos días, mi nombre es Dina Paredes.
Good morning, my name is Dina Paredes.
Trabajo en el Hotel Westin Bonaventure.
I work in the Westin Bonaventure.
Tengo 6 años viviendo en la ciudad de Los Ángeles.
I live for 6 years in the city of Los Angeles.
No, perdón.
No? No.
Tengo 6 años trabajando en el Hotel Bonaventure.
No, I actually don't live in the city of Los Angeles. I work in the Bonaventure Hotel for 6 years.
Vivo aquí en Los Ángeles por 18 años.
I live in Los Angeles for 18 years.
En el último año, mi renta ha subido por más de $150.
The last year, my rent increased for $150.
Ahorita es muy difícil encontrar vivienda
Right now, it is really hard to find housing,
de bajo costo.
low housing.
De bajo costo. He visto gente quedándose en mi área de Airbnb.
I have seen people live in my area through Airbnb.
En mi comunidad necesitamos proteger las viviendas que tenemos para que los trabajadores como yo que viven en la ciudad de Los Ángeles
I have seen people live in the areas where I live in the housing, so we need to protect those housing, so the workers that live in that area and work in that area
pueden seguir viviendo en la ciudad. Por favor, pasen la ordenanza.
So the workers that live in the city, the workers that work in that area can live in the city also. Please enact that ordinance.
Yes.
Yes.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Danielle Jones, and I find it hard to rent or own in Los Angeles because of Airbnb. According to Los Angeles Story, thousands of units across LA classified as apartment housing are open to Airbnb and short-term rentals without ordinance. The Los Angeles Supreme Court judge sided Friday with a man who was accused of running an illegal hotel in Venice Beach. According to this, the units in this building were short-term stay and not burnt under the city code. Judge Teresa Bennett wrote a tentative order this week that there is no statutory basis for restricting the use of apartment housing for the length of occupancy.
Thank you. Yes. Identify yourself.
Good morning, Samir Santi, resident of CD13. I see Mr. O'Farrell has stepped out, but I trust you'll relay the message. I've seen my neighborhood change a lot over the course of the almost 3 years since this ordinance is measured. Working class people of color are no longer able to live there. So I want to give one example from Hollywood that was reported in City Watch LA. The Metropolitan apartment building has 52 units, but just 13 are left at a time when spikes in displacement are reaching levels never before seen in the city. Unknown to tenants, Harridge, according to LA City Planning Department Central Project Planning Division Nuri Cho and Zoning Administrator Jack Chang, they changed their application from a proposed hotel to a new and untested form of property known as hybrid tours, or transient occupancy residential structure, otherwise known as a hotel. This allows the property owner to offer all 52 units for both short-term and long-term rental at the same time. Each unit is now half residential, half hotel. Thank you.
Identify yourself.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sumi Foles. I work at the JW Marriott Hotel at LA Live. I used to live in CD4, represented by David Rue, and I have firsthand experience of being uprooted from my home and the neighborhood that I love. A year ago, I was legally kicked out of my housing along with 5 other people from this neighborhood in Franklin Village I'd lived in for 7 years. It was rent controlled, but the landlord treated it like it wasn't, and LA Housing let him get away with it. So after a grueling fight in court with lots of stress, which caused health problems, putting me on disability for 2 months, I finally got relocation money, but I would still rather be in that unit. I would rather still be living in my old neighborhood. So I'm asking that the city support its people. So please pass a policy to regulate short-term rentals. This skyrocketing rent is creating illegal evictions and causing a crisis. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Juan Mendoza. I work at the Glendale Hilton and at the Pasadena Hilton. I'm a homeowner, but very worried for my kids' college education. I work at 2 properties, so I can provide for them. I can send them to a good college. But I'm worried where they are going to live when they are away in college because rent cost is outrageously expensive. We need you, City Council, to help and make sure that we have enough housing for my kids who are not making a lot of money while they're in college. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Danielle Wilson, and I'm a resident of your district, Councilmember Koretz. I'm also here on behalf of Unite Here Local 11. 2 weeks ago, we visited the Ellison Building in Venice, which is in your district, Councilmember Bonin, which I have to say has got to be one of the most egregious examples of how this issue is decimating our rent-stabilized housing supply. We really cannot wait any longer. Our membership needs housing, residents need housing, and we really encourage you to act as soon as possible. We know you're with us. Thank you.
Okay. I believe that that's all of the cards. So I'm closing public comment. That brings us where, Madam Clerk?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
They are posted. They are referred. Announcements, members, announcements. Then let's please rise for adjourning motions. I'm looking to my right side. I don't see any adjourning motions to the right. I'm now looking to the left side. I don't see any to the left. Members, this meeting's adjourned.